Hello, welcome to the From Way Downtown Pacers podcast from Indy Star. I am Indy Star's Pacers editor, Nat Newell. Here, of course, with Dustin Dopriak, our Pacers beat writer. It's been a while since we've had a podcast. That's because talking about the Pacers makes me sad, and I don't want to be sad. But we have a couple of things to talk about now, two of which I think are happy, and everything else is sad. But anyway, last night, Thursday night, we're doing this Friday afternoon. Rick Carlisle finally won his 1,000th career game. You were not there because the team has the worst record in the league, and that's what happens. We travel less when that happens.
Right.
But just your general feelings about, what do you think this means to Carlisle? Breaking the losing streak we'll get to as well, but just sort of, where are you at on the 1,000th win for Rick Carlisle?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think first off, emotionally, I think it did matter more to him that the losing streak was over than that he got to 1,000. I mean, he was when he got to 999. Tony East and I were like, "Oh, this is going to be a trip. He's going to be really something about talking to this," and he was. I mean, we had to really drag it out of him. Like at first, he was like, "I don't want to talk about that," and I'm like, "Okay, like I'm getting something from you. Like I know you don't, but I asked him about because I think." It was funny. I remember when he passed Red Auerbach, he was not happy with the game. I think they beat Brooklyn. And, he was just going into it. He didn't like this and didn't like that. And I got the smile on my face because I knew I was about to ask him about, passing Red. And I was like, he's like, wait till I make him change gear on this. And I'm like smirking as I'm ready for this. And he sees me. He's like, what do you think? This is a joke? I'm like, no, I don't but okay, tone it down. I was like, I knew I'm going to have to change gears on you, but he was really good but he did change gears well for that question because he just talked about how important Red was in his life. Obviously Red had to draft him, and helped him get started in coaching and everything. And almost everybody that he worked with to start his career are people he knew through Red. And, it was kind of a big deal for him to pass him. Now, obviously, it took him a lot more games to get to 939 than it took Red Auerbach. Red's, winning percentage is just absolutely nuts. But, and he got out and was the GM, president, whatever, head exec for the Celtics for so many of those years after he won so many titles as a coach. But, I wanted to get him on that same track, and we did a little bit to get him just to talk about what it means to be around those guys and who helped get him to where he was. And he was still really uncomfortable with it. But I think you could see just even he was trying to kind of regulate emotion as he walks off the court. Like he's kind of blank. But I mean, I think, and he opens up the press conference by saying like, I'm just, happy for our players. And I think he just, that was getting rough. 12 in a row is a lot. They went 1 month without winning a basketball game. That's a long time. Like in football, it's 4 games, in baseball, it's an eternity. If you go a month without winning a baseball game, you can fold it up. But basketball, that's a long time. That's, 12 in a row, a full month, not being able to pull off a win. It was getting rough there. And I think, that's where you saw him talking about petty nonsense, earlier in the losing streak, that's the type of thing that can really set you off the rails. I think that the only goal with this team at this point, considering where they are, is to just not emotionally go off the rails. Like they're going to be in the lottery. Like it's 6 and they're 7-31. Like there's no hope of this team making any kind of even play and push. And ultimately, they're probably better off having the worst record in the NBA. But while they're doing that, it's best for them to not want to kill each other. It's best for them to not everybody get mad at each other and everybody go to work happy with who they're going to work with. And because, a lot of these guys are still, were part of the finals team last year, are going to be expected to be a part of key teams going forward. And they're going to be expected to be, at least playoff caliber, if not championship caliber next year when they get Halliburton back and whoever they're going to get in the draft. They're going to have to change gears from this really fast. And I think the biggest thing for them is just winning enough to not hate each other. And so that I think was a big step as far as this was concerned.
First of all, so it was a 13-game losing streak. You 13, kept saying 12, but the 13 set the team record.
Yes.
The one question that is out there about the Pacers is basically, why are they this bad? Mm-hmm. Do you think it is simply a matter of they had obviously Halliburton is a big deal, but you look at what teams that went to the finals and then were as bad as the Pacers were to start. Mm-hmm. It's LeBron, it's Michael Jordan, it's Kareem, it's Wilt Chamberlain. I mean, Halliburton is a all NBA player, but he is not. I don't think he's an all-time NBA player, at least not yet.
Right.
So it doesn't seem like they should be this bad. Obviously, there's the
Mm.
injuries. I mean, what's your take on is Halliburton a bigger deal than maybe just on the face of it seems like, and
Mm.
why has it been this bad?
Yeah, I separate the season into three parts. To me, there's the excusably bad start. Then
Yeah.
there's that 4 and 6 period where they look like they were at least a functional basketball team, and then there's that 13 game losing streak that I ultimately kind of think is inexcusably bad. That's the stretch that I think you kind of got to dial in and diagnose and say, okay, what all went wrong here? Because I mean, you look at the beginning, like because at the start it wasn't just Halliburton, and that's the thing that to explain 2 and 16 out of the gate, 1 and 13 or 1 and 12 or whatever it was, it's not just like it's far from just Halliburton. I mean, like your first 3 games. First off, in preseason, you lose T.J. McConnell, and that's a big deal by itself. And then you get game 1, Nembhard, game 2, Mathurin, game 3, Toppin. Like, that's a lot. And you get a bunch of others out of the way. And, one of the guys, Cam Jones doesn't play for you for how long? Like, you don't even get a chance to see what your rookie guard looks like. I mean, like, you just look at just how many guys they had to bring in and how many different lineups they had to play in that stretch. And you really look back, I mean, there were games they were not a functional team. And there were others when it's just like you're asking guys that have been productive, but it hasn't played so many different roles than they usually played. I mean, how many times was Ben Shepherd the starting point guard? Like Ben Shepherd.
And how many times did he played point guard previously in his career? It wasn't zero,
in the NBA, none.
But it was not a lot.
No. I mean, he played some in college, and you could see him being a functional college point guard. But he's not an NBA point guard. Okay, he is an NBA wing. He's a guy whose job is I mean, he can bring the ball up if you need him to, but for the most part, his job is run to the corners, space, move the ball when he gets it, and then do hustle stuff. And he had a big hustle play last night, big time offensive rebound that sets up, I think it was the Siakam layup. I mean, that was massive. So, yeah. That was a giant play. And you've seen, I think, the last, you've seen really good work from Ben Shepherd and Aaron Nesmith lately when they're just going back to being themselves. They don't have to create a whole lot off the dribble. They're getting a lot of catch and shoot opportunities and then getting to really hustle on defense and run around and, go chase down loose balls and just be themselves. And that I think is really helping those guys get back to sort of who they are. Where in that beginning stretch, like Shepherd had to run the point and Nesmith had to drive the ball a lot and shoot at volume. And for neither one of them was that a good idea. Well, it wasn't a good idea. They had no choice because you had no creators on the floor for a while when you had neither Nembhard nor McConnell.
And it did not maximize their talents.
No. So, but this, I mean, like the 12-game losing streak, there's some inexcusable bad there. There's some inexcusable bad. I mean, I think a team that's driven by Siakam, Mathurin, and Nesmith, it's not winning all those games. They weren't going to go 12-0 in that stretch, but there's a couple games they should have won. And there's a couple games where you're just like, well, you guys weren't even here tonight. What is this? You came out and dropped 94 on a Milwaukee team that's missing Giannis. Like, come on, like you got to be able to have more juice than that. And so some of that, it's like, yeah, I mean, like you throw Halliburton on there and they're better. But, in some cases it was just, they were playing poorly. They were flat out playing poorly. And some of it, I think, is Mathurin being out there and not being completely healthy. He said the toe was still bothering him. The thumb, I guess, must have been a thing in the background where you just didn't see him. Right after that stretch where they were winning games, when they really came back from NBA Cup play, you just didn't see any juice in him. There was like a handful of games where he was really good, but a couple where you're just like, okay, where's Ben Mathurin tonight? And you just didn't see the same level of aggression that you usually see. And it was really in and out. I think the Rockets game, he was really good. It was either the Rockets or the Heat game. He was pretty good. But there weren't a whole lot of others. And so that was one thing. Guys are being asked to do a lot of stuff that's just a little bit out of their, not even a little bit, just enough out of their comfort zone. Nembhard's a lot's being asked from Nembhard, and some of the stuff he's doing well, some of it he isn't. I mean, he's actually shooting the 3 better than last year, which is weird. But I mean, he keeps seeming like he's put in position to take shots that really aren't in his pocket, I guess. And he's still. there's good about it, and Mathurin being out right now is that, I think the ball is flowing better, but Mathurin was taking on some on-ball assignments that was letting Nembhard not relax a little bit because he was still taking on a top guard. Like, it's not like you were hiding Nembhard, but he wasn't necessarily on the ball every single time, which creates some wear and tear there, on Nembhard. So like those things are all coming together. But I mean, they were good enough to win some games, in the sense that they had talent to win some games when they had some actual just bad performances in that stretch. And it's like you can't just say, well, that's one guy or that's two guys. Like there were stretches in that 13 game, losing streak where they lost games they had either no business losing or got blown out when they had no business getting blown out.
And we've talked about this before, but to me, like when they were bad and rebuilding,
mm-hmm.
and they weren't this bad, but they were bad. I mean, it was, you weren't watching the Pacers because they were going to win games, but there was a future. You didn't know what it was. It was interesting to see them develop. We know what's going to happen. I mean, we assume we know what's going to happen. Halliburton's going to come back. They're going to be much better next year, and this all goes away. Do you think that sort of affects the team a little bit, just knowing that this, and again, like Siakam's been unbelievable. I mean, Nembhard's been, like you say, I mean, you're asking him to do more than he probably should be done. I'm not saying this is not maximizing Nembhard, but he's doing stuff out there. So I'm not saying they're not trying, quote unquote. But I mean, does that sort of mindset, do you think, set in with especially a team that just went to the NBA Finals?
Yeah, I do. I think what was interesting, and I think Siakam's, one of his major rants, I think, was trying to combat that. When he said, like, we've got to decide that losing's not okay. We've got to decide that losing's not acceptable. And it goes back, and I remember sort of this conversation when they lost Game 5 to the Knicks, and then and Greg was asking Pascal about why does that happen that you don't match the effort, and obviously that conversation the back and forth of that got weird, but I mean I sort of saw people sort of playing off of it, and somebody said, well, the answer is that you can't fake desperation, at the end of the day, that the Knicks were always going to have a little bit more juice. Like, you can really go one or two ways when you're facing elimination. Some teams are ready to pack it in, but the teams that aren't ready to pack it in, the teams that decide we're not going down tonight, it's almost impossible if you still have a cushion to match that. If they really pick it up, if the other team really operates like it's do or die tonight, and you still have a couple, in the hole. Basically, like you still got a couple games that you're still going home, you've got another chance to put it away. And frankly, that you can let them expend all their energy in Game 5 and just come out of that totally spent, having just extended the series, and you go back to Game 7, you're still a little bit fresh and you're at home and you've got your crowd and you put it away, which is what they did, what the Pacers did in that series. And I think that's part of it, is Siakam's talking about this ruins my whole next day. Guys have to take it that serious. But if in the back of your mind, you're like, this season's lost. This season's lost, number one, but two, it's going to be okay, even though it's lost. We're going to get a draft pick, there is a value to losing. And even if you're not operating with that as your sort of guiding assumption, if that's in the back of your mind, it's hard to recreate desperation. It's hard to feel like so much is on the line here. And now that's going to cost some, if that's noticeable on some guys, that could cost them individually something, if you're looking at, Walker or Mathurin and you're saying, all right, Jarris, you're not playing like this is really important. You're playing like you're safe, and you're not safe, man. You haven't done enough, individually to feel safe believing that you're going to be a rotation player next year when you get Halliburton back and you draft somebody who's probably going to be a wing.
Yeah, it really, I just, is Walker going to get this shot anywhere in the NBA next year? I think he'll be in the NBA next year. Obviously, he's still on contract with the Pacers. He might even be with the Pacers.
Sure.
I just don't think he's shown enough, especially in this situation. It's one thing when you're winning and you're not playing a bunch, but in this situation, it's hard for me to think that he's going to start. He's no longer, a lottery pick next year. I mean, to me, he's got to earn everything at this point.
Yeah, no. I mean, he's gotten and Rick has said about both of them, that this is a, opportunity of a lifetime. I don't think Walker's missed a game. Like I mean, I have it up. I'm gonna have to double check that, but like Walker might be the only guy on the team who has not missed a game, who has played every single game. And I mean, he's had moments. And I think what drives you crazy about Walker, if you really, if you're looking at him and saying, okay, like, this has got to be a guy, he's done everything right at least once. Like everything that you want to see from him, like you've seen it, like flashes doesn't even seem right to say it this way. That it's like, okay, like you've seen him drive the basketball, you've seen him pass the basketball, you've seen him handle well, you've seen him make threes, you've seen him take on good defensive assignments, you've seen him rebound. And that's mostly what you're asking for. And you seem great. Like the one thing Rick says really stands out that he's pointed out is like he's got phenomenal hands as far as being able to get the ball away from somebody, get a deflection or a steal, kind of stick your hand and take away somebody's dribble. Sometimes he's got a remarkable ability to do that. So there's a collection of skills there that he has shown in NBA games. There's just the level of consistency is not near what you need. Like that's the thing. It's like you'll see him do, oh, there's something, oh, there's a flash, oh, there's a this, and then you're like, okay, where's Jarris Walker been for the last this many minutes? Or you'll see a possession where you're like, Jarris, what are you doing, man? Like why are you lost in that possession? Why are you not closing out? Why are you not navigating that screen? Why is there not enough force? And there's been too many reps to keep doing that. I think he played good last night. Actually, I mean, I think he had some nice minutes last night. I think he had some nice minutes the night before. It wasn't was in Louisville for the Cleveland game, but I did go back and watch that one. And you're seeing a couple. I mean, he's shooting better from three lately. And like just everything you see it like, okay, like he's got length, he's in remarkable condition. I mean, like he doesn't always show it, but like you look at like, body wise, he's done everything he's supposed to do. He looks like you would want to see Jarris Walker look at this stage of his career. But it's just, there's not the consistency. There's not the force. Like he doesn't play with any anger, like Jarris is a nice kid. Jarris is a super nice kid. He's funny, like he's a goofball in the locker room. Like, I mean, he's a good, clubhouse presence in terms of just people I can hang around with him. But like, you need to see some nasty from him. Like you see nasty from Pascal, like there's some edge there. And you don't necessarily see consistent level of nasty and edge with Jarris. And so, I think he like, and for the position he's going to play, you need that. Like as a power forward, as a 3-4 guy that they want to really play defense. Like you just want to see a little bit more edge. You want to see a little more like just God play like he's really mad and wants it, and like not playing stupid, but just a little bit more forceful. And just like over this time, you're like, okay, well, is he ever going to get there? But I mean, I think he's going to be a productive player just because he can do everything right. Like almost everything you would want in a multi-dimensional forward on both sides of the floor. Like he's got it. He's at least okay at everything. It's just needing, like if he could just do anything consistently, it would make a huge difference.
Speaking of nasty, we'll move on to perhaps the more important piece, I think, is Mathurin. He's hurt clearly. And I don't think, I mean, in any circumstances, or 99.9% of the time, you do not make the NBA if you can't play hurt. Some people like think these guys are, that's a problem with some of these guys. I'm not saying it never happens, but the level of play is way too high that if you're not hardcore about this stuff, you can't last at that level. I don't think anyone's ever questioned that about Mathurin. So clearly the injuries are a thing. At the same time, are they better without him, or with him, or without him at this point?
Lately, they've been better without him. I mean, and that's tough. I mean, I do think, like I did point out, there's a double-edged sword to it. That you are seeing what's missing, and I do think the ball's moving better. I think there's just more flow. They're more efficient offensively. Just as a collective, guys are getting open shots. The ball is finding the open man. It looks like what's something better than poor man's version of last year's offense. Like, I mean, it's not the same, and you're clearly missing the engine, but at least it's like it's showing at least shades of what it looked like, where with Mathurin in there, it looked like something totally different. And I think, but I mean, he's had some special games this year. He's had some special games, especially early, like, before he got hurt. I mean, before he got hurt the first time. His game against Oklahoma City was tremendous. He was really, really good. His preseason numbers were like off the charts, and like, it's there. It's just like he hasn't, but like he was really good in that stretch where they won 4 out of 6, and you're like, okay, Mathurin being back changes the game, pretty substantially. He was defending pretty well, rebounding pretty well. And I don't know, it seemed like he kind of hit a wall after the NBA Cup. I mean, as we've talked about a lot, I mean, I do think it has been a lot to ask him as far as asking him to be 2 different guys and him having to figure out which one he's supposed to be when. And this situation, I think, has made it weirder because, like for years, they're like, okay, like you need to be this guy when Ty's here. And, you need to make quick decisions, take quick shots, decide whether you're going to go, if you are going to drive, it's got to be like right now, like you don't got to get to sit there and cross a guy over 2 and 3 times and go between your legs and see if you can get, your defender off balance. Like you either got a lane to drive or you don't. And, and if you want to pull up, you can pull up, that's fine. But, like make quick decisions. The ball's got to move, no matter whose hands it is, the ball's got to move. We can't make it a, 15-second possession where you're trying to drive and deciding which you're going to go one-on-one. Like that's not how it's going to work. But it's also like, okay, well, but when Ty's out, man, we need you just go get a bucket. And in this case, like, okay, well, Ty's out all the time. Well, do you want me to play within the flow of your offense and do what's best for Pascal? Or do you want me to do what I want to do? Or what do I do when I'm on the floor and say Siakam's not there? Like it just seems like it's never been clear. And there's been some times where he's been a little bit passive and been like, okay, well, if you want me to operate like Aaron Nesmith, I'll just wait till the ball finds me and shoot when I get it. But I'm not going to go to the line 10 times. Like I'm not going to go to the rim and I'm not necessarily going to break things down. Like I'll do what you're asking. And so that requires me to be a little bit more passive. And so I don't know if that was better for them. So it seems like everybody like he was faced with this sort of weird conundrum and, it didn't seem like he was able to blow by people, with the toe. Like he acknowledged the toe was still bothering him, even though he was able to play through it. Like he was able to go out there and run around, but, like there's a difference in his game where he can't get downhill and blow by his defender. And, there wasn't enough of that. So you're not getting easy layups. And so everything else is a chore. And if you got the thumb on top of that, it's like, okay, well, you're not, like it makes it difficult for you to finish. Makes it difficult for you to shoot, and they need you to be able to do all these things. So it's not as much. I do think they missed, like I said, I don't think he did. He's still an issue defensively in the sense that he can get caught up in screens and get caught up in actions where you're like, okay, what are you doing there? I mean, Carlisle was mad at him, I can't remember which night this was, but like this is when he really got into him where he got like kind of back picked, I think, off of on a sideline out of bounds, gave up an easy layup. And it was just like, come on, Ben, like didn't really put enough into chasing it down either. And, like it's stuff like that where he'll still get, messed around with, but, like when he's on the ball, like he can get up in somebody because he takes that really personal, basically what's just you mano a mano. That's what drives Mathurin. And that was helping Nembhard where Nembhard was facing a really good 2 guard, but he was at least able to play off the ball where Ben was playing the 1 more frequently. And now you kind of got to put Nembhard back on the 1. And you got to, like let him wear himself out because you don't really have a better option. You can put Shepherd there when you bring him off the bench. Sometimes you can use Nesmith for that, but a lot of times you got to just let Nembhard play the point guard. And so they do miss him, but, like offensively, I think they're moving smoother since he's been out.
It seems like he's the most likely piece to be moved at the trade deadline. If there is a trade made, usually there isn't. The center is what everyone's been talking about. They have not been able to piece together a center. I think we could look at what Miles Turner has done in Milwaukee and wondered if Miles was exactly the answer either, although rim protection plus 3-point shooting helps a lot for any team.
Sure.
Do you think he'll be moved or, where are they? What are your thoughts on Mathurin versus trading for a center and all that stuff?
I mean, I think you have to try. It's just, I mean, you do want to set a premium on him. You don't want to just throw him away for nothing. But obviously, like the way the money works anyway, like you can't throw somebody away for nothing. I think that, it's the center market is moving a little bit. I think Zubac would have been a nice get, but I mean the Clippers are starting to win. So if you're the Clippers, I don't know that you want to part from him quite yet. I mean, you're too old to punt on this. If this season starts to go somewhere, like you're too old to punt on it.
And they don't have their first round pick, I believe, either. So
I don't think so. Yeah. I mean, so it's one of those things where like this was kind of the last, not necessarily the last go around, but they were, I think they're the oldest team in the league. So like, I don't think they're in a position that they can say, okay, well, we'll keep these couple pieces, but we'll move these ones around, and we'll let this season go and we'll look at next one. Like, I mean, I don't think you imagine having many more chances. And so, like if these guys, if the Clippers really get some momentum and they're starting to, and Kawhi's playing really, really well, I don't think you can move on from Zubac. And I don't think you can trust that you're going to get another center. They're going to be able to replace him, trade him for some wings and get somebody else. Like, Ben Mathurin, I don't think serves you any purpose if you're the Clippers.
Right.
Like
not this year, maybe long term. But you laid out the reason why that's not going to happen. I wasn't sure Zubac was a great fit just in terms of for the Pacers, but again, who is a great fit?
No, I mean, I think that's the thing. Like, I don't. Like I mean, the bridge is probably burned, but like there was the value in Turner and like, I miss Tyrese Halliburton's quotes, but I mean, like I come back to them so frequently because he's able to really analyze it well. And he said, when we asked him about Turner, he said, like I always thought, he's like, especially because I started off in Sacramento and I had Rashawn Holmes and it was just like kind of a lob it up type thing. And I always just figured, okay, I'll get a ball screen partner that I can just fling it up to, and that's going to be the best bet for me. And he's like, I didn't know that, like with Miles, I didn't know how it was going to work. He says, but I was better off having a guy who could score at all three levels, like that. I didn't realize how much that was going to make a difference until I had it. Basically it's like, okay, like he can pop, he can short roll, or he can go to the basket and he can score any three ways. And on top of that, they got Siakam, and now both of those guys could be a ball screen partner, could set screens for Halliburton, and the other one could space the corner. And you had all three of those as weapons. And that was a big, action element that they had, is the capacity to do that. Is that, just as easily as you could bring Miles up in a ball screen, you could send him out to the corner and bring Siakam up in the ball screen. And, either Halliburton or Siakam can play make out of that and can find Turner in the corner, or Turner can just space it and keep a help defender out by him because he's dangerous from three. So, but the issue is, when I looked at guys that were, earlier this winter, about a month ago, like, okay, well, what centers would they target? And it's, there are not a lot of shooters there. Not a lot of teams that have a guy who can really shoot it at the five are looking to part with him. So it's not easy. And there's not, I mean, this is a really good draft class, but one thing that doesn't have, it's certainly at its higher echelons, is a big time center. I mean, like, Boozer's a maybe. I mean, it doesn't. I mean, Boozer just feels like more of a four to me, and I love Boozer's game, and we'll get into it a little bit. But like you're not getting that solution out of the draft. If you're the Pacers, I mean, certainly, like if they're picking top five, like they can't take a center. Like they're the guys. Five will be a weird issue, but 1 to 4 has got to be in some order. Darren Peterson, AJ DeBonsa, Cameron Boozer, and Caleb Wilson. Those got to be the top 4 guys off the board, no matter I don't know what order, but if you got a top 4 pick, you got to take one of those four guys. They're too good to pass up on them if they're available. And again, there's not a true center in that group. So if that's how far down they are, and certainly appears that's going to be the case, you would be reaching with a 5, and you would potentially be leaving an all-star on the board. So there's got to be a center solution, and it seems to me that Mathurin has to be a part of it, unless they find a way to do this on the cheap. Like, I don't know, like, is Jalen Smith going to be available? Can you get him back? Because he does a lot of the things, if you want somebody who could do it on the cheap, that's a guy who does a lot of the things that you want. But that's not going to be at that premium level, I mean, like, again, maybe you can go after Daniel Gafford, with the Mavs, or there's, I mean, maybe you take a chance on Yves Missy out of New Orleans. Maybe that's a guy that might be up. But it's not easy to see that. And, I would think that anybody who's got a premium center is going to hold up a pretty high price. And, Matherin's going to be the guy that makes sense to move on, especially if you're thinking that you're getting either DeBonce or Peterson in particular. I mean, I don't think you can keep Matherin, bring in Peterson, and put together a scenario that makes sense, that doesn't mess with both of those guys.
Yeah, and I mean, Gafford is obviously not a three-point shooter. Khalil Ware actually is a three-point shooter who's interesting, but I don't see
He's parting with him. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no way they're trading him. I mean, Missy is not a three-point shooter.
No.
Those guys, just don't exist. Which is, we're not going to get into Miles Turner again, but I think he was underappreciated when he was here. But
I did too.
And speaking of, I mean, you mentioned Cameron Boozer. We sent you down there to watch him play against Louisville. He looked great. I mean, it's really a question of, I think there's a little bit of question of how his game translates to the NBA. I think I'm no scout. I think that's a little, I think people worry a little too much about that. But what were your impressions of him? Is he someone who could fit and give them part of what they needed at center/power forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's fascinating. I think on some ways it's for better and for worse. What you look at when you see him, you're like, there's no way this kid's 18. Like you look at him like, you've got to be kidding me. Because I mean, like, you'll see guys that are young and talented, and you're like, okay, that guy's going to be an all-star. But you also see some level of like kind of physical projectability. Like Cameron Boozer looks like a grown man today. Cameron Boozer looks 22. I mean, I've seen enough college basketball games. That's what the seniors look like, is Cameron Boozer. Like he looks like he's been in a college weight room for 4 years doing leg presses and squats and everything else. I mean, the man's calves and quads are giant. Everything, he's physically defined. He just looks like a grown man. And he's not going to be 19 until July. Like that's wild to me. Like I can't even believe it. And so his game is as mature as his body is. I was just really impressed with how well he just directed traffic. I mean, again, he looks like he's played 3-4 years of college basketball. Like, I mean, he just seems like should be one of those decorated Duke guys from like the 92 teams or something like that had been on a championship team before or something like that. I mean, he, like very refined game, very good screen setter, very good shooter, very good scores at all three levels, but also like keeps a really good, like kind of steady, slow heartbeat kind of thing. I mean, they were down by like 10 in the first half to Louisville, and nobody else was doing anything. I mean, I think he made 5 of their first 7 field goals, maybe 6 of their first 8. At half, he was 6 of 7. The rest of the team was 6 of 26. So, and he's not panicked at all. Like, it was just like, okay, and just getting everybody where they're supposed to be, directing traffic. He can bring the ball up. He can be a handler or a setter in a ball screen. And he can score from all these kinds of ways. He's got that the same kind of not at the level obviously, but is that kind of guy like Siakam where you can kind of get post him out on the wing somewhere, maybe 10, 15 feet from the basket. And he can make something happen out of that, basically where you can kind of post somebody up in isolation, not necessarily on the block, but with space to move. And he can take you a couple different ways, starting with his back to the basket. I mean, he can really bully guys in isolation. He's a really good passer. I mean, he made a couple plays out of a short roll where he set the ball screen, got kind of a pocket pass, but then saw a lob and threw the lob up. Just really exceptional basketball IQ. So that's going to translate. His game is going to translate. I do think he might end up having to like physically transform and cut some muscle off because he's really built, I think, for what the college game is. I mean, it's weird having covered so much of it, go away from it, and come back out of it, and it feels so much slower. Now, after watching enough NBA, the NBA pace is just so much faster, even though these are college kids. And at some level, like they are more invested in every game, but the pace is slower because they're trying so hard to slow you down. Like they are, like college teams just do not want to give up transition at all. And it ends up being a very half-court game. And Boozer's built for a half-court game. He played 39 minutes the other night against Louisville. Again, he's back to the basket most of the time, setting screens most of the time. It's a physical game, most of the time. It's not a whole lot of up and down. And he is built for that. He is physically built for that. He has, basically kind of invested his time, his energy, his weightlifting, his nutrition to be built for that kind of game where he can get hacked and he can get beat up and he can finish through contact and he can, and there's a difference to then turn that around and saying, all right, like you got to play, 100 offensive possessions in a 48-minute game. Or whatever it is, like you're going to get up and down. It's going to require him to condition at a different kind of level. But if he can build his body like this at 18, I don't have any reason to think that he can't trim it up a little bit and move a little bit quicker by 21, 22. I feel like that's a transition he can make. And if he can, again, he's got an NBA dad, Carlos played 13 years in the league after 3 years at Duke, like super successful player, like he's a guy who gets it, played high level, high school basketball, super smart guy. And he's going to find a way to fit in. He's going to find a way to make a difference. Like I don't see this guy just going as he is and, washing out because he can't make it translate. I think he's too smart for that. Basically, I think he'll, if like everything he's doing now, he seems to be doing for a reason. So when the reasons change, I think he'll be able to adapt. So again, the Pacers fit, I'm not sure about exactly, just because he's going to have to play so much faster. And again, like I think he's a best fit at a power forward, and you've got Pascal Siakam at home. So I don't know that you need something else like that. So I don't think they'd pick him 1 or 2. I think they'd take DeBonsa over him, and I think they'd take Peterson over him for sure. It's at 3. It's a tough call because I do think Caleb Wilson's interesting. If someone takes Wilson at 3, then you take Boozer at 4, and you don't look back. Like you don't consider somebody else. Like that's the guy. Wilson versus Boozer, I think would be a tough call for him. And I think Wilson might ultimately be the call just because there's a ton of athleticism there and it might better fit the transition game. Boozer's not a rim protector in any way. But I think if whoever takes Cameron Boozer's getting a productive NBA player for a decade, I don't think I'm out on the limb there at all.
Yeah. The question comes down to, is Boozer, Siakam, Naismith a viable NBA front line?
Mm-hmm.
And I think and again, Boozer's 19, so factoring that, we're not talking about a 36-minute a game player immediately, but again, some teams it probably is, but the rim protection is an issue. That's going to be a problem there. And we'll, it's also, and we'll get the usual caveats in here, which is tanking only makes sense when there is a transformative player available. Now, this year's a little odd in that I don't know that anyone would say that the top 3 are transformative, but I think they're potentially a step below that, or a half step below that.
They're really good.
And DeBansa could be that. We're talking about potential all NBA guys. And again, the Pacers aren't tanking; they just stink. So, but it does seem like it's the right year to have that happen. They have a 14%. The top 3 teams have a 14% chance at the number 1 pick. Top 3 teams have a 52% chance at a top 4 pick. So again, there's nothing guaranteed here. Although I do think, generally you hear, it's the top 3, and then I think there's the general sense that it could end up being a pretty strong top 6. And and again, these things change. Maybe it's a top 2 with, and then it's Boozer and Wilson, and then there's 2 other guys. But whatever. But there's there's potential for more. This is not a get the top. This is not a year where Ricochet is the number 1 pick. This is not a year where you want the first pick or else. And it'll also be interesting to see. Pacers history in the lottery or with top picks is not good.
Sure.
This goes all the way back to trading a first-round draft pick for Tom Owens, who averaged 10 points a game for 1 season and then was done. That pick turned out to be the second pick in the draft that involved Hakeem Olajuwon and Michael Jordan. Again, at that point in history, let's not pretend that the Pacers might not have taken Sam Bowie with the number 2 pick themselves as the Trailblazers did. But they got the second pick when Patrick Ewing was the number 1 pick. Wayman Tisdale was a decent player, but not big drop off. They got Steve Stepanovich was a number 2 pick. He got hurt, was never really a great player. Rick Smits, I don't think you complain about. You always have rather the number 1 pick rather than Rick Smits, but it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out and have gone through this season. I'm just going to speak personally and purely from our job, and which is depending on having stuff that people want to read. If they don't get a top 3 pick out of this, it's going to be, I'm going to be very disappointed in the basketball gods after what we had to go through this year.
Yeah, I think, I mean, like I said, I think you're getting a premium player in the top 4. I think as long as they don't get, if they end up with the worst record, as long as they don't get the worst possible lottery luck, they're going to be okay.
And is 5 or 6 the lowest you can go? Is it 6?
5's the lowest you can go because you got to imagine 3 teams that are outside of the top 3 jumping you.
But then the top 3 teams automatically slot in after that. Is that how it? At some point?
Yeah. So if you're the worst, then you would get the 4. Okay. So if 3 teams, what am I trying to say here?
I thought it was the 5th pick was the worst you could get, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, the fifth pick is the worst pick you can get. I'm trying to think of why that is. I know this.
I thought it was at some point the rule said that we're just going to slot people in just so they don't fall forever. I can try to look it up here quick, but okay. The lottery is for the first 4 picks, it's inverse order of record. So the worst, if the Pacers have the worst record, which they do right now, I have a lot of faith in the Wizards, even if they do have Trae Young for being worse than the Pacers. But the worst you can do is if you have the worst record, the worst pick you can get is the 5th pick. So
yeah. So bottom line, I think that's just if they can avoid 5, because I think at 5 there are a lot of interesting players after that, and guys that haven't had a chance to really dig into, like obviously there's an NBA season, so I'm only watching so much college basketball. But there from 5 on, it's like, okay, there's a couple point guards in there. The point guard from Houston is risen his name up a little bit. Michael Brown from Louisville is in there. Pacers obviously do not need a point guard. Nate Ament from Tennessee is another interesting guy. He's a big, longer wing, but I think he's a little less physically mature, where he's a little bit maybe more of a project. There are a couple centers that get there at like 8 or 9 are starting to show up. And Ken Steinbach from Washington is an interesting guy. A guy I thought was going to be at the level was Chris Sinak Jr. from Houston. I don't know that he's quite there at that level yet. It seems like he's kind of faded back. It just gets a little bit wonky once you get past 5. But I think those 4 players you feel pretty confident about. Caleb Wilson's putting up crazy numbers in Carolina. They're wild. And so I think Peterson and Devonsa, I think there's a little bit of a separation in them as just sort of being prospects. I think Boozer might end up being player of the year. Just because Peterson's, missed a lot of time injury wise. Kansas has lost some games even when he's been in. I don't know. Devonsa might be there too, but it seems like Boozer more controls games. Duke's only got 1 loss. If Duke's, like in it for the title, and you got a lot of undefeated teams still. So, I mean, this could go a whole lot of different directions, but if in March Duke's a top 3 team, and going into the tournament with the number 1 seed and they start voting, then, like Boozer's got a real good chance to win, freshman of the year, player of the year, that kind of stuff. And he's, I think, just as of, I think after Tuesday night, I think he was leading Division I scoring. He's top 5 in rebounds. And so there's a good chance he wins player of the year. So, you're not going to think of him as a consolation prize necessarily if you get him, but Wilson is quietly right there, not even quietly, loudly, right there. And he's putting up a lot of like 22 points, 10, 11 rebounds, 3 steals a game kind of nights. Length is crazy. Athleticism is crazy. I don't know if his game is as polished as Boozer is, but, has a chance to do some freaky stuff. And even if he's more naturally a power forward, you can find a spot for him. So, I mean, I think if the Pacers are anywhere in the top 4, they got no reason to complain. If they get to 5, then you're like, why does Adam Silver hate us? Sort of thing. You're going to get that, it is, like I'll take them at their word that it's a lottery and it really is ping pong balls. But, like there will definitely be the conspiracy theorists that I see on Twitter are definitely going to think that Adam Silver hates the Pacers for some reason.
Yeah. Jaden Quintus is from Kentucky big man
who's barely played, I think.
Yeah, so that's what you're looking at if you get 5, if you want, because some of the other guys ahead of him are the point guards that you mentioned, and do you want to do that? And can you trade back? And all that stuff gets really much less. I mean, it's interesting, but much less fun than
If you're the Pacers, if you're like, oh well, we had the worst record in probably franchise history by the time it's all said and done, and you're like, for that you got the 5.
Yeah, that's not right. That's not right.
Mm.
Oh, Danny Manning was the first pick of the year that they got Rick Smith. So, given how injured Danny Manning was, then I think they came out okay there. And Charles Smith, Chris Morris, Mitch Richmond. So Mitch Richmond's really the next one you get on there that was close to what Rick Smith's was. So, so I take it back. The lottery luck did fall in their favor to some degree
once
in 1988. So.
Right.
But anyway, all right, that's enough Pacers talk. I think we had enough positive in there, so we can all go watch the IU game tonight and feel good about ourselves. We will be looking to try to catch up with Debansa. Am I saying that right?
Debansa, I think.
Debansa, yeah. Whatever he said, we're going to try to catch up with him at one point as well. Not sure Peterson is close enough that we'll be
doesn't come close enough.
Before but we will go up to the Chicago. I doubt he'll be playing at the combine, but I'm sure he'll be there. But anyway, we're already turning our attention towards that. Go to IndyStar.com, keep track of what Dustin's doing on the Pacers, and thank you very much for listening and watching.